What's up, all you metal maniacs? Welcome to another episode of the Talk Louder podcast, where we geek out on all things rock and roll. Hit that subscribe button on our YouTube channel. Leave us your likes and comments. You can also leave likes and comments on our Facebook page. Follow us on iTunes, Spotify, Instagram at talklouder_podcast. And of course, our website, talklouderpodcast.com, where you'll find links to our merch and all of our previous episodes. I'm Metal Dave Glessner, along with my co-host, Jason McMaster. And man, we've been pretty excited about this guy coming for a couple weeks now. We've got Richie Faulkner on the Talk Louder podcast today. Richie, of course, the guitar player in Judas Priest, known as one of the guitar players in Judas Priest. But he's got a new album out, a new band called Elegant Weapons, an album called Horns for a Halo. He's got an all-star lineup on that album. So we got to pick his brain a little bit today about creating that album, what it's like for him to be sort of the lead, the go-to guy on this album, as opposed to working and collaborating with his Judas Priest mates. And yeah, he was a great conversation. I did not know he lives in Nashville, Tennessee.
Yeah, that's basically his band. If things keep going the way they're going, his whole band is going to be from Nashville. Next thing you know, his singer Ronnie Romero will be moving to Nashville. He may live there already. That's a joke. I don't know where Ronnie lives, but the record is great. It has a bluesy hard rock feel, but when you think about what I just said and think Richie Faulkner, it kind of turns into, well, wait a minute. And we talk about his influences and how it kind of shapes the outcome of the record. And I feel like hearing him talk about Rex Brown's bass playing on it, it has its own stamp. Ronnie's voice, you know that it's Ronnie as soon as you hear it, and it's in that classic style, I think, of old MSG records and Rainbow records and things like that, while I'm in my head hearing that's Richie playing guitar. So there's a lot in there. There's a lot of things, and it's a comfortable record. It doesn't really sway one way or the other. It's everything all at once kind of a thing. And it has nice surprises, though. And going into production of this interview today, everyone should know that me and Dave just heard the record yesterday, so it's still kind of fresh. So that's my initial feeling. I plan on listening to the record some more, and I'm sure I'm going to get into it.
Yeah.
I just want to say, he's the coolest guy. He's the coolest guy.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm kind of like, wow, okay. That I didn't know I didn't have any expectations. Everyone that I know who knows him personally has told me that he's the salt of the earth, and he just seems to be, blessed and charmed and smart and
grateful.
Doesn't feel, he's grateful, though. He's not entitled. He's not,
right.
He's the opposite of attitude. He's
right.
very, very open and fun. And it was really cool chatting with him today. I mean, it's kind of like, we just talked to someone who is one of those, and this sounds kind of sketchy when I say this, and I feel bad because Richie was so awesome, is a replacement guitar player. But I think you said something about, no, he's not a replacement guitar player at all.
Yeah.
He is kind of, you know what I mean? I'm from KK to Richie. It's like that is what it looks like on the surface. But then you hear the records he's made, the songs he's written, and his stage performances going on 13 years now.
Yeah.
He's his own guy.
Exactly. He's been in Judas Priest for 13 years now, and we've seen him perform. The albums they've put out with him have been great. We've seen him perform. He's a great performer. He's carved his own identity. He is his own man, and I think that's a testament to his, not only his talent, but his personality. And like you said, he is a really chill dude. I had the pleasure of interviewing him at the Fun Fest in Austin, Texas.
I remember that. It was him and Ian.
Yeah, him and Ian, and that was my first time speaking to Richie, and he's just so easy to get along with, and you love the fact that he's still a fan, and he views his place in life. You know, he's in one of the greatest metal bands of all time, if arguably the greatest metal band of all time. But you could tell he's still this fan of the band, and it shows. And he carries himself like that, and I think that's great.
I have to mention, it's really cool that even though Scott Travis, Judas Priest, played drums on the Elegant Weapons record, and this I did not know until we talked to. I don't think I'm blowing anything by saying that Christopher Williams from Accept, who lives in Nashville near Richie, did the demos for the Elegant Weapons record.
Yeah.
And I was going to say this, I'm glad that Christopher is is actually going to be in the band, so to speak. And he's so chill. I wonder if there's, how he feels that didn't get to be on the record. Probably not a big deal, since he actually knew the songs before Scott did.
Yeah.
Because he demoed them. So it's kind of like, wow.
Yeah.
Meant to be kind of thing. And another thing about Christopher Williams is he's a fun guy. The week that I spent with him, on tour with Accept, he's fun. I got to spend some time with him. We went and ate at this really cool Italian restaurant by ourselves when we were in New York, and he's fun. And very interesting. Originally from South Carolina. But Elegant Weapons record is great. People should check it out. May 26th is the release date.
Yeah. So anyone curious about the record, as Jason alluded to, and you'll hear from Richie, it's a really good, cohesive, hard rock, borderline metal. I wouldn't say it's quite a metal album, although some of the guitars are pretty blazing.
Well, and he, one of the heaviest bands in the world, bass player Rex Brown is the bass player.
Yeah.
So,
but it is you will hear echoes of classic metal and hard rock bands. I heard some Scorpions, I hear some Rainbow, I hear a little bit of Priest, and we'll let Richie tell you the rest. But if you're a fan of Judas Priest, you won't be disappointed. If you're a fan of those mid to late 70s hard rock bands, UFO, Scorpions, things like that.
Yeah, classic stuff too.
Yeah, you'll love this.
But also looking into the future, I think that Andy Sneap's production on the record, which I had forgotten, or I didn't really catch that in the bio. Andy Sneap, his mate and his guitar mate in Priest, is a modern metal producer.
Yeah.
And I think that adds a little bit of weight to the record, looking into a future. The production is modern, but the songs lend themselves to all influences. And Richie admits it, growing up in the 80s, he's kind of influenced by his predecessors as well as new stuff,
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well said. Quick shout out to David Castillo for providing the live shots of Richie that you've seen in the photo montage of this episode. David, we love you, man. Thank you for lending us your photos. What a great photographer.
The legend, David Castillo.
The legend, Castillo. We love you, mi hermano. Anyway, let's bring him in. Richie Faulkner today on the Talk Louder podcast.
That's beautiful. I like those lamps.
Everyone comments on the lamps, I've got like an alien head up there. I've got Ninja Turtles over there. Everyone comments on the bloody lamps.
Yeah. Well, I couldn't see it. Now the alien head is quite attractive. Yeah, fuck the lamps.
Yeah, you're talking
exactly, that's what I thought,
Yeah, you're talking to a Planet of the Apes fan over there, so I knew like the alien.
I've got silly shit back here. I don't have an alien head, but well, it depends on who you talk to, I guess.
Yeah,
that's hilarious.
Right. Richie, thank you for joining us, man. We're going to be respectful of your time and try to get you out of here in 30, 35 minutes or whatever, but first of all, I wanted to say thank you for joining us. We do appreciate it.
It's a pleasure.
Tell me, first of all, before we get started on the Elegant Weapons album, how's your health, man? 2021, you had that onstage medical scare, And Jason and I have seen you on stage with Priest a couple times in Texas in recent years. You seem to be back to 100%, but you tell us, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you for asking. I mean, there's still a couple of things that I have to deal with and take care of, that are kind of knock-on effects from that. But it's in comparison with what some people have to go through, it's tiny. Some people will lose their limbs or whatever. I've got my struggles are pale in comparison. No, but I appreciate you asking.
Yeah. Well, we were shocked, because you're a young guy. You seem to be reasonably healthy. We don't know you as an out of control party animal, and just to see that happen was frightening and shocking. So glad to see you've rebounded.
I appreciate that, man. No, I hear you. I mean, for my age at the time, I was 41, and I was kind of angry. When I came round. Luckily, I came round and they saved me. I was kind of angry. I'm not a partier. I don't drink too much. I don't overeat. All that stuff. I kind of play it fairly straight. And to be going through that, I just felt like it was unfair. Obviously you get through that, but that's just a part of it. But it really kind of got to me for a while.
Right. There's other candidates that are far ahead of you for that sort of situation.
Yeah, and I think they'd admit it as well. Some people are probably shocked that would be candidates for that. I mean, luckily it happened to me, and I was healthy and fairly young and didn't do that sort of stuff. So maybe it got me through it. But yeah, it was a battle to overcome for sure.
Well, we're glad you're doing well. Let's talk about Elegant Weapons. That's the reason you're with us today. New album comes out May 26th, I believe. First of all, tell us about the band name, Elegant and Weapons, two words that seem to be very opposite. So how did you come up with that?
Well, it's a reference to the guitar, really, or the instruments that we play. And sometimes the instruments are words as well, and words can be weapons. So it all kind of linked to the instruments that we play in the band, and also the lightsaber that Obi-Wan Kenobi gives to Luke Skywalker in A New Hope. Because it's our guitars and our instruments. They're from the 50s. In some, they were built and designed in the 50s, and they remain with us today. So they're almost like relics from a bygone era that have survived the present day. So it was a reference to all of that stuff.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. Well, so the lineup on the album, the lineup that recorded the album is yourself, obviously, Rex Brown from Pantera on bass, Scott Travis from Judas Priest on drums, Ronnie Romero on vocals. When you put that band together to record the record, did you know that lineup was going to be temporary? Or was the initial idea to keep that band together and go tour and that sort of thing?
Well, I knew obviously that Rex had connections with Pantera, and I think they were looking at doing the Pantera thing at the time. So Rex was always upfront about not being able to tour it. Scott was a bit later on. He couldn't do the live dates. So obviously, I didn't know what it was going to be initially. I didn't know if it was going to be an EP or an album or a band. I didn't quite know. I wanted it to be a band that grows and stuff like that and evolves. But at the time, I didn't know. So it was during the pandemic. I was fortunate enough to have those guys on it. But obviously, as it transpired that this is an album and could be a band, then it became clear that, not everyone could tour it. And that's fair enough. Again, I'm just grateful to have those guys on the record and able to record those songs.
Yeah. The two of us, Jason and myself, we're Texas boys, so we're big Pantera fans. So how did you meet Rex initially? I know there's a Judas Priest Pantera connection, but how did you personally meet Rex and recruit him into this project?
Well, I met Rex at a friend of mine's house, and we hung out one night, and we made the connection and became friends through that. So we were friends first and foremost, really, and when it was getting to the point of recording bass, I thought, maybe I can ask Rex, and I didn't think he'd do it. He's Rex Brown, he's a legend. But I asked him, and he said he'd do it. So I keep saying the word grateful, but totally grateful that he could do it, and having someone so legendary, not only in status, but like the sound of Rex Brown's bass is just like, it's like as iconic as John Entwistle's is, you know, like you put John Entwistle's bass in a mix and it just creates something unique and exciting. And that's what Rex's bass did. And just totally fortunate to have him around.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who produced the record?
It was Andy Sneap.
Oh, that's right. Your mate.
Yeah, my buddy. Yeah. I mean, I text Andy. I would say every day we text each other about something, whether it's, you know, personal or music related. And that's been like for the last few years. We've been on the road together. We've been in the studio together. We've been doing this, you know, Priest and Elegant Weapons together. And Andy was, I mean, it was a no-brainer, really. He knew what my vision was for this. I wanted something that was steeped in the legacy of everything I've come from. You know, I'm not one to shy away from my influences, but also a sound that was relevant in 2023. So, and hopefully get the mix right, you know, that balance of the past and the future. And Andy is that guy. He grew up in the same sort of era as I did musically, but he's also a modern day metal producer. So, I mean, it was a no-brainer to ask Andy if he could be up for it.
Yeah, it's nice probably to be able to just reach over and tap your buddy, hey, and over here, and it's kind of makes things a lot very convenient for you. You're blessed. It's an incredible career that you've had. I feel like I want to ask a question that sort of reaches back. Mm-hmm. And Dave probably knows this, but just for me and our listeners, how you got the Priest gig. Mm-hmm. Just a quick version of that story.
Well, it was a friend of a friend that got approached as a potential candidate from our crew. They knew him. His name was Pete Friesen. He used to play with Alice Cooper and the Almighty, and the crew used to work with the Almighty. So they reached out to Pete and they asked him. And long story short, he couldn't do it. He respectfully declined and put forward a few names that he thought could be contenders, and I was one of those names. It was a wrong number. I hadn't seen Pete for 5 or 6 years. But fortunately, obviously, I'd done some work with Iron Maiden and opened up for Maiden with Steve Harris's daughter, Lauren.
Right.
So they contacted the production crew and they got my current number, and we went from there, really. And I had to borrow the train fare off of my mother to go up to Glenn's house and take the train up to my mum's house. I mean, it totally changed my life, you know.
Did you pay her back?
I don't think I did. I don't think I did.
Come on, man. Yeah, thanks, Mom. Thanks, Mom, for helping me get the Priest gig.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, right. No, I think I did in other ways. I think she had some windows done, and stuff like that around the house. You know what I mean? You do as a son, you know.
Chores.
I'm sure she's proud, regardless.
Oh my God, yeah.
So Elegant Weapons now, the recording lineup had to kind of go their separate ways, busy with other obligations. So you pulled together a touring lineup, and on bass you've got Dave Rimmer from Uriah Heep. Ronnie Romero stays. On drums, you've got Jason's bandmate for about a week, Christopher Williams. Jason fronted except for about a week last October when Mark Tornillo fell ill. So how did you find that lineup?
Well, I live just outside of Nashville, and Christopher lives in Nashville. And Christopher, actually, I met Christopher on tour with Priest a few years ago. And Christopher actually laid down the demo tracks on drums for this record with Elegant Weapons. Scott wasn't available, and I wanted to get the ball rolling, get the process started. So I asked Christopher if he could come around and to my studio and put the drums down. And then later on, we went over it with Scott. You know, Scott worked his magic on the tracks. But just to get the ball rolling, Christopher was the guy that did that. So when it came to choosing a band that was going to take this forward, he was the guy. You know, he can sing. He's a killer drummer. I think as well, Jason, didn't he do some vocals when you went out with him?
Yeah, it was amazing because I didn't even rehearse. It was like I got on a plane and the next day is the first gig. It was like, you know, a sound check and then that's it. So I'm hearing I'm hearing all these killer harmonies, and I'm going, where the fuck is that coming from? You know what I mean? And I find out that it's Chris. Like the next day when I'm back there warming, he's up there, you know, hitting these great notes, and I'm like, holy shit, that's you?
Yeah,
That's not on page, you know. He's really
got a real
good.
dedication to that side of things. You know, you know, on the Weapons record when we were rehearsing last week, and he's got a real dedication to filling out those harmonies that are on the record.
Yeah,
you know, which I don't have, or sometimes I'm doing a little bit too much where I can do everything at the same time. So having Chris there playing the drums like he does and filling in those vocal harmonies is a blessing, really.
yeah.
When you're writing and recording this album, what did you learn about yourself as a songwriter when all the weight is on your shoulders this time?
I definitely work better as a team.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of this, it started life with me and a producer friend of mine, coincidentally, that worked with Lauren Harris. Tommy McWilliams. So he was the lyric guy in this. So I would do the music, and he started off doing the lyrics. You know, so I've got, you know, when you guys probably know it, but you're probably used to it now. When you listen to your voice back on a recorder, it sounds awful.
Yeah.
It's cringy. You have to get used to it. I still can't get used to, you know, if I write lyrics, they don't sound as good as when someone else writes them. So, you know, I stick to my lane. Got Tommy involved, and I definitely work better as a group. Obviously the music on this I wrote all myself, but it definitely goes smoother when there's someone else in the room to bounce it off. So as we go forward in Elegant Weapons' career, we write new songs together. I'm definitely looking forward to bouncing ideas off the other guys and seeing what they bring to the table in a writing capacity, you know?
Yeah. How would you describe the Elegant Weapons album to your fans? A lot of people might think it's an extension of Judas Priest, but I think that would just be lazy. So what would you tell someone who asks what it sounds like?
Well, that's always difficult. And I've had, you know, from the first single, I've had people say they can hear scorpions in there, which is totally, you know, I didn't hear that, you know. So my point is, you can have an idea of what it sounds like yourself, but people perceive it differently, you know. As I said before, I'm not afraid of my influences. So there's Black Label in there, there's some Priest in there, there's some Hendrix in there, some Sabbath and some Ozzy, you know. But it's kind of, as I said before, I come from a legacy band in Judas Priest. So I think to do anything, as you said, that sounds exactly like Priest would have been pointless. So I wanted it to have its own legs and have its own character. So I think it does. I think it's a bit more bluesy. It's a bit more hard rock rather than screaming heavy metal. There's, you know, a couple of twists and turns in there, but it's rooted in the DNA of the bands that I come from, for sure, and hopefully takes it forward into 2023.
Right.
Very well-rounded record, in my opinion. I listened to probably 7 of the tunes. I was shocked to hear Lights Out.
Yes.
That was a nice surprise. And that sounded amazing. Ronnie sounds amazing. He fits your riffs quite well with how you're describing it. And even someone hearing scorpions in that, I didn't hear that upon first listen either. But when I think about the it's like comfort food. It's like food you love when the next section comes or the next song. And I feel like that might be coming from a flow in your writing, how you know how you put riffs together. How the next thing is, okay, what am I going to say now with a different song? Ronnie's fitting that. He's doing great. I like the lyrics too. They're not really hardcore, or like you said, it's not brutal metal in any way. It's very soothing, yet still has some balls, you know?
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head, really. You know, when I put these songs together, as I said before, it comes from my influences as a guitar player and as a musician. And it's 70s, 80s, and early 90s heavy metal and rock, you know, some 60s in there. And I think it was the same with Ronnie's voice. You know, I can't speak for all his influences, but as you said, it's like a comfort food where we know this type of voice. It's something that we've grown up with, and it's the soul of the past, but he's also pushing forward in the future. So I heard Ronnie on these songs, and I heard more of Ronnie Romero in there. And I think he'd agree with me. I think there's more of Ronnie in there than I've heard before. So the more we do it, hopefully the more that comes out. But I think you're right. It comes from the same place as I do as a writer and a guitar player. You can hear where it comes from, and you can hear where he comes from, and we're all familiar with that. And hopefully get the balance right between where it comes from and where it's going.
Yeah, and in creating something fresh as well as comfortable.
Hopefully, yeah.
Comfortable future, right?
Yeah, I'm a 43-year-old man from, grew up in the 80s. So
yeah,
I am who I am, you know what I mean? So I didn't want to do anything contrived and force anything modern. It's who I am, and whatever comes out of that is perceived by the listener, and hopefully they like it.
Yeah.
I for the record, I heard a little bit of Graham Bonnet in Ronnie's voice. And my favorite tracks so far, I've only listened to the record. It was only available to me through the label yesterday. But the cover of Lights Out is great. I mean, it's amazing. And I like Do or Die. To me, it has a bit of a Freewheel Burning vibe. But that's really the only thing that I hear an extension of Priest. The rest of it, as you say, is a sort of a conglomeration of all your influences. So
I think you're right. I think you hit the nail on the head there. And that was actually a song that I had a conversation with Andy about, and I didn't know if it was too much of a Priest influence. But, from what Andy said, and I agree with him, why wouldn't it be? Why wouldn't there be a song on there? I've been with the band almost 13 years and toured and written with them. Why wouldn't that be like an intimate part of my DNA now?
Sure.
So I put it on there, maybe that will kind of evolve out. Maybe it will grow stronger. Who knows? But it was natural and organic. So why not put it on there?
I feel I'm sorry, Dave. I feel like there's a swagger on this record. There's a couple of songs. I'm sorry. I like Dave said, we've just heard the record yesterday. Mm-hmm. There's these bluesy licks that you're doing. And I like it when I'm a little bit like, oh, wow, that's interesting. 'Cause I can't quite feel where the downbeat is when you play those uppity kind of odd starting on the upbeat somewhere. And then when the drums come in, I'm like, oh man, that's nasty. And there's a swagger to it. And then when Ronnie comes in, it's like, there it is. That's it. So you're kind of gliding through some of those. I was gliding through some of those songs like, holy shit, this is like I said, slimy. Some of it's slimy.
I would agree with that. And I think at the moment, it's a three-piece basically with a vocalist. So there's that kind of dynamic as well. You can move stuff around and push and pull a little bit. When we play together, as I said, there's that push and pull. And slimy, I think, is a good term to sum up some of the riffs. It's a bit. I don't know what the word is. Not doomy.
No.
But some of those old Priest and Sabbath riffs that came from Birmingham. There's a bit of that in there. And it's definitely grimy for sure.
Yeah. I also hear just good hard rock blues fusion via, some of the late 80s. Maybe like for a moment I heard like some Lynch Mob or something for a second. But that was just me not stabbing in the dark, but like, oh, wow, okay, yeah, I get that. I get, it was not over analytical, just kind of finding a groove in some of the songs and some placement on, what memory I have left. So,
well, hopefully he doesn't, get pissed off with me if I say this, but I was never a huge Lynch Mob or Dokken fan. I was a big fan of George Lynch. And I'll probably get a phone call now. But so if there was anything,
blabbermouth, here we come. Yeah,
yeah, exactly. No, but he knows that, and I think he respects the fact that indirectly that stuff probably went in. As a guitar player, you can't help but be turned on by guitarists that were influenced by George and that kind of stuff. So it's like Jimmy Page. I was never a huge Zeppelin fan, but Jimmy Page went in indirectly, through other guys and stuff. But yeah, but it's great when people get their own. I love that when you you have an idea of what you sound like, and other people interpret it a different way. That's the beauty of the art form, you know.
Yeah. Well,
Right. You can't tell people what to think and how to feel anyway.
right. That's the beauty of music. It is
right.
open to interpretation.
That's
but
right.
I think if the point was to create a conglomeration again of your influences, you did a great job and made a cohesive whole. And it's a great solid record. Lights Out is kind of the cherry on top, I guess, if you will, although the original songs are great as well. Tell us about the cover art. Is that a Claudio Bergaman piece on the cover?
No, it's not.
He did the animated artwork or something, didn't he?
He's done a couple of posters for us. He done the initial poster when we announced the record with Scott and Rex, and he's done another one since then. But the cover art is actually I did it via AI. Some of this AI stuff started coming out, and I knew what I wanted, but I draw a little bit and I paint a little bit, but I couldn't. I used it as an expression of what I saw in my head. The Horns for a Halo thing. I wanted it to be eye-catching and sum up that title. So that's what it was. It was AI, and then I took it from the AI and then added a few things of my own. In Photoshop to make it less AI. Make it my own thing. But I used the AI as a tool to sort of get those ideas down onto the screen and then go from there.
Yeah, a man of many talents. I did not know that. Well, it's a great looking album cover.
Thank you very much, man. There's a bit of a bone of contention at the moment on the moral standing of AI. But I just saw it as a tool to put my ideas on the page, so to speak, and then adapt them from there.
Sure. Yeah, using your resources, as Jason likes to say.
Yeah. Use your resources.
You mentioned, I can't let this go. You mentioned George Lynch, and you have a daughter with George Lynch's daughter. And I remember, how surprised were you at the backlash when Priest made an announcement that they were going to go out as a 4-piece, and everybody just freaked out because Priest is the iconic dual guitar band. And then there was talk, because of the George Lynch connection, of him possibly being added to the lineup. Was there any substance to that? Was it ever a possibility?
I don't think so. I think George was an obvious choice, potentially, from the fans. And I understand why. George has got a pretty unorthodox guitar style. Like Glenn, it's not like Glenn's style, but in the same way that Glenn's style is unorthodox and very unique, George has his own unique style as well. So I can see how it came around, and obviously the family connection made it even more obvious to some people. But no, it's great that people were so passionate about Priest, in the sense that they didn't want a one guitar. They voiced their opinions pretty loudly, so we couldn't help but respond to that. And funny enough, a little while later, there was a 3-guitar version of Judas Priest, which everyone was fine with. Yeah. So sometimes it doesn't necessarily have to be a 2-guitar band, as long as it's a 3-guitar band. I think people they like that. But we done the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with Ken as well. Yeah, and they let me be on stage with them. And yeah, it was a trip, really, to be part of the 3-guitar attack Judas Priest. Maybe for once in our lifetime, maybe it won't happen again. Maybe it will. But so yeah, the 1-guitar thing didn't work, but the 3-guitar thing definitely did. So
everyone's okay with you adding a guitar. Just don't take one away.
More is more, I
think,
it seemed to be
seemed to be sort of a litmus test for like, let's see how the fans are feeling, and you put the thermometer in. It's like, oh shit, 1 guitar, kind of.
Yeah, it's definitely, it wasn't like this, but it just gives you an idea of, if you wanted to stir up a hornet's nest and create a bit of publicity, you could do that, Yeah. But again, we wouldn't abuse the fans' opinions like that.
That's not what I meant. But it's kind of interesting how they reacted so quickly to that.
Well, again, we were lucky. If no one cared, we would have had a problem.
Right. It's a good
there you go.
problem to have, that they're so passionate and weird about. Oh, well, what are you guys doing? I had to. I got to admit, I showed up for the Accept gig and I'm meeting like, 5 people and I'm going like, wait, 3 guitars? I didn't even realize that Uwe and Philip were both with Wolf. I was just like, what? And then I was like, what? Okay, sure. This is going to be interesting, but I totally get it now. Dual harmonies going, no rhythm guitar unless you got the third guy.
Yeah.
And
It's
that
definitely,
makes
it could
sense.
definitely
That
work.
makes sense to me. I think of Allman Brothers. I think of Leonard Skinner. I think of, all these guys
Maiden.
inviting their buddies on stage all the time. So
Iron Maiden have been doing it since Brave New World, I think,
right.
Yeah.
It definitely doesn't not work. You know what I mean? You can it's definitely a different avenue to go down. But I think there's too much water under the bridge with the Priest guys and the politics and stuff like that. It's a shame, but it is what it is.
Yeah. So how was the Rock Hall performance for you? I understand that's the first time you met KK. And I mean, what an honor for you, especially. An honor for the band who's been at it since the early 70s. But I would imagine that was double the honor for you as a relative newcomer to be on that stage and to be recognized alongside with the band that you've been with now for almost 13 years. What was that like for you?
Well, as you said, it was an honor just to be up there, really. I mean, I offered to not be. It wasn't my accolade. I haven't been around for 50 years as an iconic musician like that. But they were adamant that they wanted me as part of the band on stage because that's Judas Priest today.
Right.
Obviously, I didn't get inducted, and that makes complete sense. But just being up there with Ken, it was great. I was like a pig in shit or whatever you call it. You know what I mean? I was like a kid in a candy store. Again, to be part of that 3 guitar attack. He sounded great. He played great, and I thought we looked great as a team. With the 2 flying V's together, that was killer. I loved it. I loved every second of it. And looking around, it was Lionel Richie and Pat Benatar, Neil Giraldo, and Annie Lennox and Dave Stewart and The Edge and Duran Duran. Looking around, I was a little bit against the Rock Hall and what it stands for initially, but when you get there, you can't really help but be a bit blown away by the legends in the room. So it was an honor to be there, really.
Yeah.
I'll say.
Wow. One more Priest question, and then we'll end on an Elegant Weapons question. What's the best piece of advice Rob Halford ever gave you?
Wow, good question.
Oh, that's a great question.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a great question. Glenn's given me some advice.
I like it. Yeah.
I'd have to think long and hard about that one. I'll tell you what. We were in the studio writing Firepower, and we had some differences of opinion. I said my piece, and Glenn said his piece, and he's a legend of rock guitar. What the hell do I know? But I felt like I had an opinion. So, we had a few words it wasn't arguing or anything like that, but we had some strong opinions about where we thought the song should go. And afterwards, I said to Rob, sorry that it got like that. And he said, no, you have to do that. Otherwise, you resent the other person and you end up not doing anything. You've got to, if you think that opinion is right, you've got to put it out there. And he's right. I think otherwise you can imagine if you do that a few times, you start resenting the people that you're creating with, and that just stifles the creativity. So I'll always remember that. And Glenn was one of those guys as well that he will always say, what is your idea? And if he thinks it's a better idea, we'll go with that. So he's very open to new ideas, which again, he didn't have to be. So it was an honor to be included in stuff like that.
Yeah, they seem to have been very welcoming to you, and I applaud that. And I think you've risen to the occasion and you fit right in. You're a great addition to the band, obviously a great player. I know you had some big shoes to fill, but I feel like you've carved out your own identity and you're here to stay, and that's great. Last question, and we'll let you go. Elegant Weapons, we've talked about the possibility of touring. Any chance of getting to the United States? Because I know bands, well, you're in Nashville, so is Christopher. So is it possible that we might see you do a string of dates in the United States?
I hope so. I mean, that's always been the goal when putting this together. When it became apparent that it was a band, I wanted it to be a band that tours and plays live and evolves and grows and writes and records records together. You know, I didn't want it to be a one album deal. You just put a record out and that's it. So we've got some dates coming up in Europe over the summer that are being added all the time. And then beyond that, we're looking at other possibilities. So I'd love to get into the States and bring it over here. So watch this space.
Yeah. Well, we'll look forward to that. Hopefully you can put something together and take this on the road, because it's a great album. People need to buy it and listen to it, and then hopefully go see it live as soon as possible. Richie, thank you so much for joining us today. I also wanted to say real quick that Firepower was a great record, man. I mean, wow.
Thanks, dude.
What a great record. So
I appreciate that, man. It really connected with a lot of people. And again, you never know how an album's going to be perceived until it comes out. And you just do your best that you can every time. And we did the same on Redeemer. We're doing the same on this one that we're recording now. You know, how can we make that one better? And better is subjective, obviously, but you know, how can we make it a better performance or better batch of songs or better playing or whatever it may be? How can we rise to the occasion again? And it's a tough one to beat, Firepower, but we're going to try and do it.
Do it, man. Do it, because that was a good one. If that's the benchmark that you're trying to beat, I can't wait to hear the new one.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
All right, Richie, on behalf of my co-host, Jason McMaster, I'm Metal Dave Glessner, along with our very special guest today, Richie Faulkner of Judas Priest and Elegant Weapons. Check out the new album, Horns for a Halo, out May 26th. Thanks, Richie. We appreciate you, man.
Thank you, guys. Have a good one, and I'll see you soon, hopefully.
You too.
Hope so.
Yeah.
Bye, guys.